Well, hello everybody, and welcome to webinar number 2 of the Uncluttered course. I am so glad that you were able to join us live. Those of you who are able to join us live, if you're watching this as a recording, I'm so glad you're able to join us for the recording. But wherever you might be, or maybe joining us from, morning, afternoon, evening, middle of the night, maybe some of you woke up. Very excited to have you. I'm really excited about what we're going to talk about today. It is an important topic. Before I go any further, I'm going to introduce you to my co-host here, my son, Salem Becker. He's going to be running support behind the scenes, and we'll be keeping an eye on the chat. But I'll the questions tab, I should say, not the chat, the questions tab. Take over, Salem. Let them know what they need to know to have the most wonderful experience possible.
All right, well, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm here to show you around a little bit. If you were in the first webinar, hopefully you know the ropes. Anyone new, I'll let you know right away. We use that questions tab. It is on the control panel, should be on the right-hand side of your screen. If you're on the app, I believe there's a question mark button. That questions tab is where you can go ahead and type hi or say where you're from right now, make sure it's working for everybody. Anyway, that questions tab, you can drop your questions that you have at any time during the webinar. The last about half hour, my dad likes to answer your guys' questions for you. We can maybe connect a couple of you on air to ask him live. And then that same questions tab, you can throw any technical difficulties that you have during the webinar. I'm going to be behind the scenes, so I can shoot you a quick message if there's something wrong on your end. Or if a bunch of people start saying the connection's bad, then I can always text my dad and let him know that as well. We've got a bunch of messages, perfect. So yeah, anytime during the webinar, throw them in that questions tab. I am monitoring behind the scenes. And then to go along with the connection issues possibly, I would encourage you to log off of background tabs or apps you have running. That'll just help the connection run more smoothly on your end. And that's all I have for you. So back to you, Dad.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Not only is Salem joining me as my co-host, but I believe I just saw my wife's name. So Kim is attending the webinar. She's hanging out with her mom. So I think mother-in-law is here as well. So I had better not bring her up in any stories. Just kidding. Just kidding. Well, hey everybody. Yes, thank you so much for being here. I'll just mention we'll run about 90 minutes. I have about 45 minutes of material, and then we'll answer some questions at the end. All of this is recorded. We'll get it uploaded just as quickly as we can when it is over. And so if you need to bail early, that is just fine. If an emergency pops up in your home, feel like you can tend to it, because we'll be here when you get back, and we'll get that recording up. And I really do love the question and answer time. So hopefully we'll have some opportunity to do that. Conversation I want to have today, let me kind of set the stage where we are in the course, but the conversation that I want to have today is 7 keys to overcoming consumerism. So that's what we're going to talk about. Once we have decluttered our home, how do we keep from filling it back up again? But before that, let me just reset where we are. We are in week number 7. Week number 1 and week number 2 were about finding your motivation, writing out your why statement, taking a quick sweep through your home in week number 2. Starting in week 3 through 7, we have been working through our homes, room by room, starting with the easiest, starting with the easier, most lived in areas. And so this is the largest section, the largest module. It's weeks 3 through 7, which is 5 weeks total. Living room, bedroom, clothes, kitchen. We're on kids areas this week. Or if you don't have kids, then you're picking your first spot, picking whatever spot you want. Next week, we are going to switch gears. We're going to transition into talking about clutter-free habits. So long-term, how do we set ourselves up for success in our home? Once we have decluttered it, once we have gotten through that process, how do we keep our home there? comes down to two things. Number one, it comes down to the habits that we embrace in our life. What are we taking care of on a daily basis or a weekly basis? What is the interval that we're going to go through our stuff again and get rid of things that have accumulated? That's what we're going to do in weeks 8 and 9. The final 3 weeks, experimenting with less, weeks 10, 11, and 12. What you might be asking, and I even saw a question pop up in the Facebook group today about this. Okay, I get that we are doing kitchen and kids areas this week, but there are still rooms in my home that I haven't decluttered. Almost certainly that is the case. And so the challenges or the instructions will be, starting next week, we're going to change our conversation because there's some things I think we need to talk about before we end this course. And so we're going to start talking about those in week 8. But that doesn't mean you should stop the decluttering of the spaces in your home that need to be decluttered. So the formula has, so take the principles you've learned, all the lessons we've talked about through week 7, and how do I begin applying those in the next space, in the next space, in the next space. If you remember, our formula has been easiest to hardest, starting with the most lived in spaces. So think to yourself, and actually I'm gonna have you write it in the questions tab. That might be helpful for you. I think that'll bring a little resolve into your life. So as you think about what is the next area in my home that I use frequently, that would be the next easiest one for me to accomplish. Maybe it's the laundry room or the home office or a guest bedroom. Maybe you didn't get to the dining room in week number 3 or the den, or maybe you didn't get to all the kids areas. Like, I don't know what it is for you. I always think homes change quite a little bit after bedroom, living room, bathroom, kitchen close. Like, someone's got an office and someone doesn't. Someone has a library, someone else doesn't. Someone's got a pool house in the back, someone else doesn't. And so houses begin to change after kind of these core rooms. And so you're going to have to apply these principles going forward while we talk about new things. So let me quick check the questions tab. How are we doing? Are we writing down what we're going to do? Home office, guest bedroom, laundry, linen closet, laundry room, home office, den. Beautiful. There you go. Beautiful. Office, powder room, guest bedroom, linen closet. You got it. So whatever you wrote down, as soon as we end week 7, we're going to talk about clutter-free habits, but you know what your next room is. Okay. Let me jump in then to our conversation. 7 keys to overcoming consumerism. The best way for me to explain the importance of this conversation is with a quote that I think I invented. I think I invented at one point when I was writing. At least I've always claimed it as my own. But here is the thought, and I really want you to think about it. Owning less is great. Wanting less is even better. Owning less is great, but wanting less is even better. If you can picture, it's one thing to declutter your home and to own less stuff, and that is the process that we have been doing. But how do we change our mindset from just owning less to wanting to stay there, to actually desiring to own fewer things? Because if you can get there, then all of life, what you spend your money on, what you spend your time on, what your home is used for going forward, it begins to change when we make that mindset shift from just constantly wanting more to actually wanting to own less. It's a little bit like, I think the best illustration of this is, it's a little bit like the difference between going on a diet and maintaining a new habit, maintaining a new eating plan for the rest of your life. You can go on a diet and lose 20 pounds, but if you don't change the way you eat, but But if you, thumbs up for losing 20 pounds, you can lose the 20 pounds, which is great. But if you don't change your habits, if you don't change your eating habits going forward for the rest of your life, you're just going to gain the 20 pounds back up again. The problem is, this is a pretty different conversation. How do I declutter my home is a different process, a different conversation than how do I overcome consumerism. And you can picture this. If you walk into a bookstore, you can find shelves and shelves of books about how to declutter your home, how to organize your stuff. There's countless books on that topic. But when was the last time you found or read a book on how to stop shopping, on how to stop buying things with your life, how to overcome consumerism? It's a different conversation. Now, I mention it in all of my books, but generally speaking, most times we talk about organizing or decluttering. We don't talk about changing our shopping habits going forward. So how do we do that? Today, I want to offer you 7 keys to accomplishing that in your life. Now, I want to warn you that these aren't, I got that one, I'm moving to the next one. I got that one, I'm moving to the next one. These aren't like checkbox, I've done it, what's the next one? I've done it, that's easy, that's easy, that's easy. Most of these are lifelong journeys. We have ebbs and flows. We do good sometimes, we fall behind other times. Like these are huge life change topics. So I just want to warn you of that going in, that we're going to have a real deep and rich conversation, which I hope you would expect by now that that's the type of thing we're going to be talking about in this course. If we're going to have life change, and we're going to have to talk about changes that actually affect our lives. And so that's what we're going to do here today. These are a list of things that I have noticed in my own life. This is a list of things that I have discovered from talking to other people, hearing some similarities between different people's journeys. And so let me jump in. 7 keys to overcoming consumerism. The first key, I don't have a handout. There's no slides that's going to pop up. It's just me and you. Maybe you want to write them down or pull up a notepad on your phone. Sometimes I get to step number 6 and people are like, can you go back through them so I can write them down? So just start now. Here we go. The first key is to recognize the benefits of owning less. The first key to overcoming consumerism long-term is to recognize the good things that are coming into my life when I own less stuff. Because if I can notice life is better owning less, then I'm going to be less inclined to fill my home back up again with things that I don't need. So I would encourage you, now that we are in week 7, as best you possibly can, to be thinking through, how has this process made me feel? What are the things that I have noticed in my home as I've begun owning less? What is happening in my life? Anytime I'm in the Facebook group and someone comments about how they took a picture of their decluttered kitchen and they just love how beautiful it looks clutter-free. Like that would be an example of noticing the benefits. I just like my kitchen better when there's fewer things in it. I found that it was easier for me to pick out clothes in the morning now that I've decluttered my closet. It is easier for me to tidy up the living room at the end of the day. I wake up in a better mood knowing that my bedroom isn't full of a bunch of clutter on every surface that I look at. It's easier to do the laundry. It's easier to put my dirty clothes away because I want to keep my bedroom looking clean. Anything and everything, I'm saving money. I found money. I love the I found money post. All these things are happening in your life because you're owning less. And so be specific and be articulate and say them out loud. Tell them to your friends, mention it to your spouse, notice it, say it. The more you do that, the more you'll be convinced that less is better than more. Now, this became a reoccurring theme on my blog when we started becoming minimalist and we started the process 16 years ago. I didn't always know what to write about, things I was getting rid of or what I was learning. And so anytime I noticed a benefit in my life, I would make a journal entry on the blog. And I ended with like 25, 27 very specific life-giving benefits of owning less: more money, more time, more energy, more focus, better example for my kids, better life for the environment. I could own higher quality things, easier to get ready in the morning, just over and over again. Every time I noticed something, I would write about. My first newspaper interview was about a year and a half after becoming minimalist and decluttering our home. A newspaper in Albany, New York, the Albany Times-Union, Naomi Selden. I even remember her name. She sent me an email, asked if I would answer some questions. She would want to run a story. And so she sent me 7 questions, and man, I labored over those questions. It was it was like my first media interview of any kind in my life, and I want everything to be just right. Like days I'm going through, like, am I phrasing this right? Am I saying this right? Am I getting everything in this answer? Um, the 7th question about minimalism, about our journey, about our process was this: do you think minimalism is just a phase you're going through, or do you think this is something you're going to keep up for the rest of your life? And it was by far the easiest question of the entire interview. I had just spent 6 questions talking about why we decided to own less, the things that we were getting rid of, how our life was changing through this process, what I was learning. I just spent 6 questions talking about all the good things that had come into my life. By the time I got to question number 7, the answer was easy. This is not just a phase. This is not just something we are going through. Look at all the benefits I've discovered of owning less. Why would I ever go back to buying things I don't need? Why would I ever go back to wasting money and time on things I don't need in my life? And that's what I'm talking about. The first key to overcoming consumerism is we recognize the benefits of owning less. If you are involved in the Facebook group, anytime you notice something, just pop it in there and just write it. Thoughts disentangle themselves when they pass through the lips or the fingertips, as the old saying goes. And so when you're thinking about something and you're noticing it and you sit down to write it out or articulate it, you'll be able to verbalize it even better. The second key to overcoming consumerism, then, if the first one is we recognize the benefits of owning less, the second key is we need to find the culprit. At some point, we need to find the reason why we were buying so much stuff before. What is the reason that was prompting me to do this? I love when, well, let me mention this first of all. We see on average 5,000 advertisements every single day, 1 million by the time we reach the age of 21. And so we are constantly bombarded with messages that we should buy more stuff, that we should buy this thing they're selling, that this thing will make our life better, it will improve our life, it'll make it more comfortable or happy or luxurious or joyful or whatever it might be. They give us all these promises, and then we just hear these messages so many times we buy into them. I love it when people start to kind of see through some of this messaging. I remember a couple of years ago, someone in the Facebook group snapped a photo of a flyer they had gotten in the mail from a makeup company, and the subject line on the flyer said, you can never have enough shades. You can never have enough colors of eyeshadow. You can never have enough shades of eyeshadow or something. And she posted it. She took a picture. She posted it in the Facebook group. And this was what she said. Her commentary was, she said, you know what? A couple weeks ago, if I had received this mailer, I would have agreed. You're right. You can never have enough shades of eyeshadow. You never know what dress you're going to have to match or what the event is that you're going to have to go to. You're right. You can always have another shade of eyeshadow. And this is what she said. But just last week, I threw out like 12 different cartridges of eyeshadow. Like you can own too many shades of eyeshadow. I just threw a whole bunch away out of my bathroom. And so certainly one part of finding the culprit as to why we're buying so much stuff is we need to start seeing through the advertisements and the messages that people are selling us. But here's where I think sometimes separate myself from some of the other people writing about this topic. You can't just blame advertisements for your shopping habits. Because the reality is, there is no advertisement, there is no Madison Avenue executive, there is no corporation who is driving you to Target or Michael's or Kohl's to buy something. No one is going to Amazon on your computer and clicking to ship. Like you are making that decision. And so the external messaging is connecting with something in our hearts that is motivating the action. And so if we are going to overcome consumerism, at some point we need to figure out what is it in my heart that is causing me to buy things that I shouldn't be buying. There's no progress to be made in blame, is the way I say it. We started minimizing our home and decluttering our stuff and started taking van loads of things to Goodwill. And we took the first van load and it felt great. We took the second van load and it felt great. We took a third van load of things to Goodwill, Salvation Army, thrift store. They were all kind of in the same area where we lived in Vermont. By about the third van load of things that we took to drop off, I started to ask myself some pretty difficult questions. Starting with, why did I have 3 van loads of things in my home that I didn't need? Why did I have so much stuff in my house that I wasn't using? Or even back it up a bit, why was I buying things that I didn't need? Like, think about that for just a moment. Why do we buy stuff that we don't need? Like, what is the thinking? What are we doing? Why would we buy anything that we don't need to have? Man, you start asking yourself that question, and I'll warn you, you are not going to like what you discover. Because a lot of things that motivate our shopping habits are things like jealousy, selfishness. We want to impress other people with the things that we're buying. We're trying to prove that we're successful for some reason. We have fear about not having enough. We're looking for security. We're looking for happiness. We're trying to compensate for some discontent that's going on in our hearts. We're trying to kind of fill a void in our lives. Like there are a lot of different reasons. Sometimes we're just bored. Sometimes we're lonely. And there are a lot of different reasons why we go buy things that we don't need. Like I mentioned, these steps aren't easy, but I got to tell you, it can be really hard to discover some of those unhealthy motivations in your life. But the reality is, you are never going to begin to overcome them unless you know what they are. And so we need to identify them, and we need to sit alone in a room with ourselves. We need to be quiet. We need to think deeply about what's motivating me to pick up this thing that I see on sale or go back to the store that I've been to 2 other times this week. Like, what is motivating this? Discover what that is, and then we can begin to overcome it. Weighty stuff, right? I promise you. The third key to overcoming consumerism is we need to limit input as much as we possibly can. The third key to overcoming consumerism is to limit input. And by that, I mean, we just want to limit where we can the number of advertisements that we're seeing. Two things come to mind that we can do this. We can't control all advertisements. We can't stop everything that we're going to see. But there are two things that we can control. Number one, we can unsubscribe from email newsletters. I know that you are overwhelmed with the amount of email coming into your inbox, and you're like, I could never get ahead of it. Or if I click unsubscribe, it's like 12 new ones start showing up. I think those are all spam. And there might be some illegal spam that is showing up in your inbox. But any real company with like registered with the state or with the country, whatever it might be, they are required to have an unsubscribe button at the bottom of their emails. You can find it on all of mine. And if you click unsubscribe, they are required to unsubscribe you. And you're like, but there's so many, I can never get ahead of it. Let me tell you how you do this. If you spend just 2 days, a couple hours a day, if even, and just any reputable company, JCPenney's, so JCPenney's, right? Apple, Amazon, anything that's popping up with like a McDonald's, like anything that's trying to sell you something, scroll to the bottom, click unsubscribe. If you do that for like 2 days, you will notice the emails start to slow down. So then you'll stay on the top of on the next ones that come in, and the next ones that come in, and the next ones that come in, and slowly but surely it will begin to slow down. We eliminate all of them. I haven't been able to, but for the most part, I can keep the spam. I can keep the reputable ones at least out of my email. Now you might be wondering, yeah, but how am I going to know when there's a sale going on at Linens and things? Like, how am I going to know? And I always think, that's the whole point. That's the whole point of why we are unsubscribing. We're all in this course together because we have too much stuff. We don't need more stuff. We need less stuff. And so let's unsubscribe from as many as we possibly can. That's one way we can limit inputs and overcome consumerism. The second one, and I mean this, watch less television. If you watch less television, you will buy less stuff. It was actually one of the bigger arguments I had over my first book, The More of Less. I had a section on overcoming consumerism, and I had a section on watching less television. And my editor said, I don't think we can put this in here. You can't just single out television. What about websites and magazines and billboards and newspapers? Like, advertisements are everywhere. Can you really just single out television? And I told him I wanted to, and I told him the reason why. My grandfather died at the age of 99 in December of 2020, so he was born 1921. I must have talked to him 10 years ago, so early 90s. When he was in his early 90s, one of the wisest men I think I've ever ever known, and one of the men I look up to as much as anyone in the world. And I asked my grandpa, I said, "Do you think the world is more consumeristic today than when you were a kid?" I grew up in the 20s and the 30s, and he's like, "Absolutely." And then I said, "Why do you think that is? Like, what do you think changed?" And he said, without hesitating, he said, "It's because of television." Like, he grew up pre-television, then came television, and now the world where we are today. And I said, "Television? Why do you say that?" And he said, "Because television gets to glamorize whatever it wants to glamorize." And think about it. He is totally right. Television, with its video, with its audio, with the way it frames a picture, with the way it presents a story, it gets to glamorize any lifestyle that it wants to glamorize. Sometimes they have you cheering for like the bad guy in some of these shows, like you're cheering for the bridesmaid who's trying to steal the groom from the bride, and you're like, yeah, run away with her. And you're like, what am I doing? Why am I cheering for someone to break up the wedding? Or the crooks are trying to steal the money from the vault, and you're like, yeah, I get the money. Like, wait a minute, they're stealing money. Why am I cheering for them? But just think about it. All the commercials, they're all there to sell you something. But it's not just the commercials, it's the television shows. And I'm not just talking about product placement, I'm talking about the lifestyles that they glamorize, the lifestyles that they portray are going well, and what success looks like, and what we should be hoping for and dreaming of, and what a good life looks like. They get to portray any of the good things they want without showing any of the downside. Television can glamorize anything it wants to glamorize, and make no mistake about it, television is an industry entirely built on selling you something, moving you to action. One of the single greatest life change habits in my life is when I began to limit television. So if you want to overcome consumerism, start watching less television. You can decide what that looks like in your life. If you're not ready to give it up altogether, I can totally understand that. Maybe just one day of the week, you turn it off. Maybe you decide to start turning it off an hour earlier every day. Maybe there's a couple shows that you don't really like, but you watch. Like, decide not to watch them, and find something else to do. Read a book, go for a walk, call a friend, uh, call your kids, write a book. um, so many things that we can be doing. Um, so much life we can be living rather than watching someone else live theirs. 7 benefits, 7 keys to overcoming consumerism. Number one, we recognize the benefits of owning less. Number two, we find the culprit. We find the reason why we're buying so much. Number three, we limit inputs wherever we can, specifically email and television, I think are good ones. Number four, for future purchases, we consider the full cost. And what I mean by that is a lot of times when we think about buying something, we just look at the price tag, and that's like the only factor we weigh about whether we're going to buy it or not. And if the price tag shows that it's a really good deal, then we buy it. I always wonder, like, it's a whole nother side thing, but I'm like, I don't know. You walk into a store, like a clearance store, and it's like regular $109, and you can buy it for $29. And I'm always like, who said it was worth $109 in the first place? Like who decides that number? Anyone can put that. Anyone can put any number they want on there and tell you how great of a deal you're getting. But anyway, the full price of anything we're buying isn't just whatever the price tag says. starts there, but it's more than that. Because whatever I buy, I have to bring home. It's going to take up space in my home. So it's taking up physical space in my home. It's taking up mental space in my mind. It's one more thing that I have to clean and organize and manage and move around. It's one more piece of visual noise in my life. Every single thing that I bring into my life is my responsibility until I decide to get rid of it. And just ask yourself, how difficult has this process been for you? Like, how agonizing have some of these decisions been? How much time have you had to put in to a space and an area to declutter it? So every time you're going to buy something, don't just look at the price tag, but think to yourself, is this something I really want to have to go through the same decision I've been fighting with for the past 6 weeks and have to do it again, care for it until the day I decide to get rid of it? For future purchases, consider the full cost. Think beyond the price tag. I think the more we notice the weight of our possessions, I think the more we notice the benefit that comes into our lives as we own less, the more free we feel, the more calm our home feels, the easier it is to have people over, the less time we waste in the morning getting ready. Like, that's all because of the burden of possessions and the weight of excess stuff in our life. And so I think the more we do this, the more we understand it, the more we can start to consider the full cost of a possession. I think it's maybe what makes online shopping a little bit more difficult. Shopping online, there's no, like, it's just a little picture on the screen. There's like no reality to how big it is or how much it weighs or how much space it's going to take up. It's just a little picture. Why wouldn't I order it? Okay, number 5. Let me review. 7 keys to overcoming consumerism. Number 1, we recognize the benefits of owning less. Number 2, we find the reason why we've been buying so much. Number 3, we limit inputs. Number 4, for future purchases, we consider the full cost. Number 5, to overcome consumerism, we embrace 2 practices in life: gratitude and generosity. We start practicing gratitude and generosity. The more we do both of those, the less buying of stuff we don't need will happen in our lives. In the 1980s, I think Harvard was the first place to offer a class or a study on what they called positive psychology. And the whole idea was, up until that point, now 40 years ago, up until that point, psychology was mostly when something wasn't quite right with a person, when something was mentally going wrong with a person, they would study it and try to figure out what was going wrong. But at some point, 40 or 50 years ago, people stopped asking just what is going wrong with some people and started asking what is going right with people who have high life satisfaction, high fulfillment, high emotional well-being. Like, people who are doing well, let's look at what's going well in their life. So we're not just noticing the bad things to avoid, but we can start talking about the good things that we should be bringing into our life. And virtually every study ever done on positive psychology or emotional well-being and what contributes to it always contains gratitude and generosity. Over and over and over again. You just Google research on gratitude, and it will be like pages and pages and pages of studies that have been done that show how gratitude reduces our stress, even contributes to physical health, like just changes everything about who we are. The problem is, most of us view gratitude and generosity as a response to life's circumstances rather than a discipline that we should do every day. And what I mean by that is when gratitude is a response, when things are going well, when my health is good, when my kids are getting good grades, when I like my job, my sports team is winning, my relationships are going well, like when the weather is nice, like when everything's going well, then it's really easy to be thankful and to be grateful and to be happy about my circumstances. But as soon as circumstances change, as soon as my health declines, my kids start making bad decisions, I lose my job, I lose my best friend, lose my spouse. Like when things go south, this is when we need gratitude the most. But if I'm just viewing gratitude as a response to life's circumstances, then the times I need it the most are the times I've experienced it the least. Gratitude, to be most effective in our life, is when it is a discipline, when I practice it regularly, daily, regardless of what my circumstances are. And so I don't know what that looks like to you. For me, that's my prayer life. I pray every day. I start every prayer with thanks to God for good things in my life and for who He is in my life. And so that's a moment where, regardless of what's going on around me, I'm taking a moment to be thankful and to be grateful for the good things in my life. For others, a gratitude journal is very popular where you write down 3 things that you're thankful every day. It could be with your spouse, just telling your spouse one thing that you appreciate about them every night before going to bed, or just a habit as you're going to bed to just mention one thing that you were thankful for that day. Like, these are all examples of ways that gratitude can become a discipline in our life. And what gratitude does is it shifts our focus away from the things that we don't have, because we're spending more time and attention thinking about the things that we already do. The second discipline is not just gratitude, but generosity. In the same way, generosity, most appreciated in our life, is when it becomes a discipline and not just a response to my circumstances. A response to my circumstances means I get a bonus check. There's money left at the end of the month, and so I'm going to give a little away. I'm going to give a little bit away. I have money left over, and so I can give it. I'm not in debt, so I can give it. That's a response to circumstances. But in the same way, the same way gratitude needs to be a discipline, generosity needs to be a discipline in our life as well. Here is the benefit of generosity. This is the change that it brings in our life. Generosity helps us discover that we have enough already. If I have enough, if I am giving something away to those who are in need, then the natural response in my heart is, I have so much that I can give some away and I'm still okay. And so what this legitimately looks like, and I mean this, if you are not giving any money away, I would encourage you to start this week. Start with just $5. Like, you find a website, you find a charity, you can even drop it in at the grocery store, a little can, anything. Like, you give away $5 this week. Next week, give away $5. The week after that, give away $5. Even if you don't think you can afford it, give something away every single week. Here's what you'll discover. At the end of the week, you'll still have food to eat. You'll still have clothes to wear. You'll still have a roof over your head. You can give away $5 the next week. You'll still have food. You'll still have clothes. $5 the next week. You still have food. You still have clothes. Maybe you move it up to $10 a week. You still have food. You still have clothes. Your needs will still be met. And suddenly, your view of the world begins to change, where it's not, I don't have enough, I constantly need more, even just I need more money all the time. Suddenly becomes, no, wait a minute, I'm okay. And I have so much that I can give some away. It will change the way you view the world. Gratitude and generosity. Two more, and then I will take some questions here. The sixth key to overcoming consumerism is we need to begin to see our money differently. And by that I mean your money is only as valuable as what you choose to spend it on. Your money is only as valuable as what you choose to spend it on. So I have my money that I worked for and is in my life. I could take that money and I could go buy a big screen television, and I could put the screen on the wall, and my dollars that I spent will never be worth more than the television that's hanging on the wall, or the new purse that I hung in the closet, or the new dishware that I put in my cabinetry. Like, it will never become more than that physical item that I bought. I could take the same amount of money, and I could take my family, and we could go spend a night in a hotel. We could go out for a fun dinner. We could go out for breakfast the next morning. I'm just trying to do the math in my head. You could probably do that for about the same amount of money as buying a television. I could go eat someplace we've never been. We could go have some crazy fun breakfast with chocolate chip, cinnamon, marshmallow, puff, waffles, like something that my kids would never get at home. And suddenly what happens is that same dollar amount that could have been the television now becomes a meal that we talk about for the rest of our lives. It becomes a memory. It becomes the water park at the hotel that we stayed at, and we remember even when our kids are older and they talk about that gift shop and how they had to bark like a dog to get the wolf ears. That's one of our experiences. And my kids are in college, and we still talk about it was a Great Wolf Lodge, and we stayed there one time, and like the gift shop, if they barked, they would get like dog ears. And I don't know, we're 12 years later, and they still talk about that, talk about that moment. But that's what I'm talking about. Like, our money, what could have been a television, has now become a memory that we talk about even 12 years later, and maybe for the rest of their lives. Like, our money can be worth more than the things that we're spending it on. Or let me rephrase it. What if I took that same amount of money, and rather than buying a television, rather than spending a night in a hotel with my family, what if I use that money and I help an inner city kid go to camp in the summer? What if I take that money and I use it to help a girl in some developing nation get to go to school? What if I use that money and I help a child in an orphanage get placed into a family where they can grow up with parents in a family, in a home, rather than in an orphanage with four walls and workers coming and going? Like, that's what we can do with our money. In that case, the kid we send to school may get out of the neighborhood that he grew up in and start a new life somewhere else and get to raise his family in a safer neighborhood with more opportunity. The girl that we got to send to school who otherwise couldn't afford it, learns to read and gets a job and becomes upwardly mobile. The child who grew up not in an orphanage, but in a family, gets to see what family looks like. And so when they have a child, they get to raise them in a family rather than that child going to an orphanage. That's what our money can be used for. And those are the options. And I'm telling you, once we start to see the change in the world that our money can bring about, we become less inclined to go buy more clothes, more stuff, more things to hang on our walls or pile on the shelves. We can literally change the world with our money. We can start dreaming bigger dreams for our money. Last point. Let me go through them all for the last time. 7 keys to overcoming consumerism. Number 1, we recognize the benefits of owning less. Number 2, we find the reason why we've been overbuying for so long. Number 3, we limit the messaging, we limit some of the inputs coming into our life. Number 4, we start to consider the full cost of the things that we're buying. Number 5, we make both gratitude and generosity a discipline in our lives. Number 6, we just start dreaming bigger dreams for the dollars that we have. And number 7, we live forever changed and forever free. We make a decision. At some point, if we are going to overcome consumerism, at some point, we have to decide, I am going to live my life differently than I have up until this point. At some point, there's a moment in time where we drive a stake into the ground, where we're sitting in a computer, we're watching our phone, we're in our love seat, we're in our office, we're at a spot right now, and I decide I'm changing my life. I am not going back to the person I was before. At some point, we decide there's a before and there's an after. And we need to make that decision. And I encourage you to make that decision today. And when you do, I think that you will discover that this course, isn't just about decluttering your home. That this course isn't just about getting rid of some of the things that you've accumulated in your home. That this is a course about changing your life forever. That this is a course about dreaming bigger dreams for your life. That I am becoming a new person. My life is too valuable to waste chasing and accumulating material possessions. The money that is coming into my life can be used for so much good in the world. Why would I waste it on things that are going to perish, spoil, or fade? My life is about bigger and better things than physical possessions. And once you see that and once you know that, then you make that change, you make that decision. I am not going back to the person I used to be. Now, that doesn't mean that stuff doesn't still accumulate. That doesn't mean that we still don't make some decisions along the way that we wish we hadn't made. But no matter what happens in the future, no matter what mistakes we make, no matter where we slip back and fall back from time to time, we can go back to this moment and we can decide, this is when I decided to change. This is when I decided to become a new person. This is when I decided to live forever changed and forever free. And that's the person I want to be for the rest of my life. And that is how I am going to make it the best of my life. Let me end my points there. Salem, you are still with us?
Yes, I am.
There you are. About
Can
35
I
minutes here, and so I assume that we'll have some time to go through some of the questions.
can I throw a fun one at you real quick?
Of course, you're in
I
charge.
promised to write it down, but I thought I'd read it right here for you. Have you ever accidentally decluttered something that you really regret getting rid of?
The story I tell, you know the story I'm going to tell, Salem?
Uh,
No.
table in the garage?
You've been here a while. I write about it in my book, The More of Less. It's a funny story. I can't think of anything more serious. Well, I'll have a comment for it. But so I was the one leading the decluttering charge in my home, and Kim was helpful and on board. So I don't want to speak anything about, but I was certainly the passionate one about it. And so I decluttered the kitchen. So we started in May. I decluttered the kitchen. Salem, my son, his birthday is August 22nd. And we were having a birthday party that day. I was upstairs and I hear Kim loudly proclaiming from the kitchen, Josh. And I was like, it was one of those screams where you're like, uh-oh, I did something wrong. And so I came down and she said, did you get rid of the football shaped Jello molds? And I said, of course I got rid of the football shaped, of course I got rid of the football shaped Jello molds. Why do we need football shaped Jello molds? And she said, because we're having a sports themed party for Salem today. And so I shouldn't be laughing, but so she had bought these Jello molds specifically for this birthday party. I had gotten rid of them. Um, I I like to point out that we just had football field shaped Jello at the party, and everything turned out just fine. But nevertheless, yes, that is a story that that's a story that I often tell. I really struggle to think of other things that that I've gotten rid of. I talked in my first webinar that we did about getting rid of a like a folding table that 4 years later we ended up needing. I just borrowed it from the neighbor, so it wasn't all that big of a deal. I suppose there's a few things that I've gotten rid of that I needed to replace, but nothing that was incredibly expensive, nothing that was so sentimental that life hasn't moved on. You know, I like to encourage people. This is actually a serious question. I like to encourage people that it is better to get rid of 1,000 things and have one or two down the road that you regret getting rid of. That is better than holding on to 1,000 things in your home, 999 of them you never use ever again in your life. Like it's just better. It's okay if we make a few mistakes along the way. That is a better mistake than carrying everything I own forward for the rest of my life because I'm afraid of making that one mistake. Most of them are pretty quickly repairable if we do. Thanks.
All right. I believe I have Joanne ready for you. Let me get her set up. All right, Joanne, are you with us?
Just voice, Joanne. I can't hear her.
Let me get you.
All right. Yeah, looks like we got her unmuted. That's fine. Too bad.
Yeah, let me read it out for you.
You got it.
How often do you suggest going through your items in rooms already decluttered? I know that people change, kids grow, we outgrow hobbies. Know that decluttering is a forever thing, but how often would you suggest going through areas that have already been done?
So we will talk about that in the next couple weeks. We'll talk specifically about that. And there are There's no perfect list. There's no one time frame that works for every room. There are some spaces. I don't want to take all the material from next week. There are clutter themes to attract clutter is the way I explain it. And so when like you leave a little bit of clutter on the countertop, and then something else enters your home and it gets added to it and piled up to it, and then like that corner's filled, and so we start putting things in a different corner, and so like this really depends on how you use your home, where things function in your home, the flow of your home. There will be some things that you will want to declutter daily. Cleaning your kitchen at evening, clearing off your bathroom counter every time you use it. Like there are some spaces that we'll want to stay on top of every single day, which when there's too much stuff, then this is like hard to do. But when we own less and when we've decluttered it, I think you'll find keeping those areas tidy to be a lot easier. So there's some daily spaces, and you'll notice them in your home. There'll be the spot where if you don't declutter it, things just add to it. The round side table in the living room where your teenager sits and leaves a bowl and spoon every evening. Like if you don't grab that bowl and spoon every evening, it's just going to keep collecting. There are also weekly habits. I was thinking taking out the trash, doing the laundry, like those types of things. And then there are other areas that are just going to take like a different frequency. I go through my garage every year on Halloween. Our pantry, our pantry's more cluttered than it should be. I can't remember the last time we went through it, maybe 6 months or so ago, and just seems like that's a space where a lot of things collect in my home, and I need to have a nice schedule on it, noticing when I need to declutter. So it'll look different for your home. We'll talk about that more next week. Great question.
All right, let me connect you with Leslie. All right, Leslie, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
Oh, yay, I get to talk to someone. Leslie, where are you from?
New Jersey.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you for joining us on this early evening.
Glad to be here.
I don't have your question in front of me, so I'll get to hear it for the first time when you ask it.
Okay. So my question is, and I've been working your program for quite some time and made a lot of progress on my own. So my question leads to, how do you recommend dealing with battling those around you that you live with that are not on the same page with decluttering?
Did you say battling?
Yes. I did. I chose that for a reason. So, and the culprit's my husband, and
I
we
was going to say we should probably start by changing our phrasing, but no,
exactly.
you picked that on purpose.
Yeah, I did pick it on purpose. And, we've gotten to a point where there's some agreement, but the 7 questions, he's on a different page. And so the reason I say I've been working the program for a while is because of that. It makes it so much harder because I would cut the cord on everything. And, I'm not ready to cut the cord on him.
Yeah, well, good for you. How long has it been for you?
Being married or decluttering?
No, the decluttering.
So I moved in 33 years ago to our house that was filled from top to bottom into his house. And I've decluttered a lot so I can have people over without having to clean my house on the surface. But the basement pulses, the garage pulse. There's a lot of stuff that we have excess stuff we don't need.
So 30 years?
30 plus years.
30 years. 30 years of decluttering and he's not budging.
I didn't say he's not budging, but he's not moving enough. Like he'll bring something home. And then I said, wait a minute, we just agreed you would get rid of something.
And
So
how does he respond?
This year is better because I threatened to leave. Not, I'm joking, but I was like, look, I can't take it anymore. But I think he sees the value in doing it, but it's a habit and it came from his parents. So it's something that's part of how he grew up, and I grew up differently. And so we continue to battle.
Yeah. Well, after 30 years, I don't know if I have. I don't know if I have any really good answers. I would continue to paint a picture for him of what your money could be going to instead. There's probably, after 30 years, usually my course is 12 weeks, so I get to say, well, if it's just been 2 months, give it some time. But 33 years, I find myself backed into a corner here. I can't rely on my usual answers. Um, one of the things I tell people, and I'll just mention it here, like you stay focused on the positives. This is going to be the thing that you are good at in your marriage. This is the thing that you bring into your marriage. You're always going to be the one who's going to be passionate about this. You're going to be the one who's raising the level of conversation around this, being mindful of it. I am guessing that there is something else different that your husband brings to the marriage. Some things that he's good at that you're not, and so that makes the team aspect. I would be looking for not frustrated times to have this conversation, but not just when he's buying things and you're upset, which is when we tend to have these conversations, or you can't find the umbrella and you get really upset. But yeah, anytime you guys sit down and talk about goals or what you want to be doing with your life or what the next season of your life is going to look like, I think you bring up the idea of, if we had less stuff, if we directed our money towards other things, be thinking through what would draw him to that. What would he want to be spending his money on? What are some of the owning less benefits that he would appreciate, as opposed to why you're motivated to do that? Yeah, I don't know. My typical joke is if I knew how to get your spouse to do anything you wanted, I would write a different book. So there's some truth to that. But it sounds like you're doing a good job. Relationships are complicated. Sounds like you're leading with love, and yeah, I don't know if I offered any helpful words. Probably some of the things that you're doing already. So I think you're doing a good job, and wish I had a magic bullet for you, but I don't.
No, thank you. Your book's been great. It's been very helpful.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I throw another fun one at you real quick?
Sure.
What is the most reoccurring gratitude theme that you've had after all these years of minimalism?
The most reoccurring gratitude theme. There are three things that I am continually grateful for over and over and over again. I don't have to spend too much time on religion here because that's not what it's about. But when I think about gratitude, I'm thankful first and foremost for the role that God plays in my life. It means the most to me. Number two, I am constantly grateful for the people that are in my life. I love my wife, Kim. I love who she is and that I get to be married to her. Love my kids. They're both bring joy into our lives and fun and adventurous. And so they're both in college. Sam's graduating this year. Look, I'm excited for his future and what God has in store for him. So I love my God. I love my family. And number three, I am just thankful for the work that I get to do. I love doing what I do, and it takes a lot of time. I'm right in the middle of writing a book. I got a deadline on Sunday, as a matter of fact, and so it's been a long week trying to get through a final draft of a book. And so it's been taking a lot of time and a lot of energy, but it is important and it is meaningful, and I love what is becoming. And so those are the three things that I'm most thankful for, and I think all three of them have become better because of minimalism, if that makes sense. All three of those things have always been values in my life. I valued my faith, I valued relationships, I valued work, but minimalism, owning less stuff, being less fixated and focused on money and possessions has allowed me, I think, to become better and more focused in all three of those areas. And so I think that ties in directly to what we're talking about here.
All right, I've got Elizabeth patiently waiting for you here. All right, Elizabeth, are you with us?
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, good. Thank you, Josh. Thank you. I am grateful for you.
You are kind.
Seriously, really appreciate your course. So thank you so much. My question in going through your course, we've been getting excited about trying to declutter. And, luckily our family's on board as much as they can be.
Mhm.
But, what is your advice on tackling areas like for us, it's the garage when it really seems overwhelming. And every time we work to declutter it, we just get so deflated, like really feeling helpless pretty quickly.
Yeah. Yes. How do we declutter these large, overwhelming spaces is what I call them. If you could try and think through the process that we've had here, starting with a clean sweep of getting rid of the easy stuff all over our home, and then working through the rooms in our home, easier to harder, for the goal of like seeing progress, feeling motivated, sensing accomplishment, and then using that momentum to get to the next harder space and the next harder space and the next harder space. I would try to think through what does that look like if it was just one room. So my best advice is start with the large items in that area that you know you can get rid of. Because when you get rid of the big items first, you start to see the space clear up and like you noticeably start to see the difference. And then I think if I'm doing my garage, I'm thinking through, okay, what section of the garage is going to be the best bang for the buck? Like what's going to be the easiest decisions? What's going to be a noticeable spot? And then I'm going to move to the next spot. It's going to be a little bit harder, maybe not quite as noticeable. I'm eventually going to get to the basement and the boxes and boxes of sentimental things that I've collected. But I think that's the process if I articulated that well. There's a whole thing called the progress principle, and it's a human behavior thing, and it says that when our minds see progress taking place, then we're more apt to continue the behavior. So a little bit like if you go on a diet and you don't lose any weight for a couple days, then you're like, well, I'm done with this diet. But if you start a diet and like you lose 2 pounds the first day and you go lose a pound the next day, you're like, this is a good one. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing here. And so I think if we can start to see visual progress in some of those spaces, practically, we're going to try and set aside a Saturday to do it, or we're going to set aside an hour every evening for the next week, and we're going to make our way through it, kind of plan it and prepare it, and then make a plan as to how you're going to go through it.
Thank you.
Hope
It
that
is that
helps.
sentimental stuff when you talk about getting into those sentimental boxes. Those get tough.
Yeah, I would save those for the end, especially if they're in boxes. Like you want to go through them. But if there's easier wins that you can find first, then I think the boxes become a little bit easier, or you're a little bit more prepared to handle them.
That's great. Thank you.
All right, I've got Natalie next. Okay, hello, Natalie.
Hi.
Hi, how are
Uh,
you?
yeah, good. All the way from Australia.
Oh, welcome. Glad you could join us on Friday morning.
Yes, correct.
All right.
My question is, how do you keep a lot of do you keep a lot of sentimental items from your childhood or your children?
I have found that the best way to do this is to set some sort of boundary that I am going to use to decide what to keep. So from my childhood, I have a relatively small cardboard box of things. I don't know, we were maybe in our 30s, early 30s, and there's three of us. I have a twin brother and then a sister who's a year younger. And we all came home for Christmas. Actually, my parents warned us. We were all coming home from Christmas and they said, hey, we're decluttering the home and you need to go through all your stuff from when you were a child and you decide what to keep and take with you to your home. And we are going to get rid of the rest. And so it was a Christmas time, and I remember it. All of us kids went through all our boxes of things, and I had a cardboard box full of stuff, and that's what I kept, and that's what I took. For our kids, then I think I'm trying to think of what we have from our kids' childhood. Not a lot of stuff. I guess they still have their rooms, and so a lot of their things are still in their bedrooms. When they move out and move on, then I suppose we'll have to decide what we're going to keep and what we're going to get rid of. But I think that what happens when we set a boundary, 2 boxes or 1 tub of stuff, plastic tote, whatever it is, then it really helps us decide what's really important and what's just kind of important. Like honestly, if you asked yourself, like, I'm just going to keep 3 things from my kid's childhood, you would probably be able to decide what those 3 things are easier than you think. But when we have all the space, we just keep all the stuff and we don't think much of it. And so I think I got to get it all down to this 1 small box, or I'm just going to pick out the 10 things that I want to remember them the most, or the 3 things, or even just the 1 thing, only the best. I once did a Canadian radio show and someone called in and said, my theory is only the best, only the 1 best thing, what most represented that person to me. And so for all of her past relationships, she's kept 1 thing and it's displayed somewhere in her home. So that's why I would do it. I think the physical spaces, the physical boundaries really help us discern most important from just kind of important, or I was keeping it because I had the space. But I always think this isn't the place to start. So hopefully you're making progress other areas. And once you get rid of the easier things in your home, I think you'll be mentally prepared. So how's it going? You getting rid of other stuff? You making good progress, Natalie?
Yeah, I've got a 11-year-old son and yeah, 10 years of clothes and so forth. So yes.
Yeah, I would, kids' clothes. I hold on to a couple of your favorites that you remember him wearing at certain times when you kind of picture him as a kid. You kind of picture certain outfits, and then, all those other clothes, there's probably some single mom somewhere in your town, not too far away, who could really use them and would really appreciate having you take that burden off of her life. So, yeah, hold on to a few and find someone else who can use the rest. That's how
Yeah,
I would
I've
do it.
found some people that I can give the clothes to, so I'm quite grateful of that.
Yeah.
Thank
Good.
you.
All right. Nice to meet you. We're doing good here, Salem. 10 more minutes.
Yep, I got one more for you. Before I forget, I had someone ask about what point number 7 was again.
7 is decide to live forever changed and forever free. It's just about making a decision that at some point we make the decision that we're not going to live the way we used to. And so the way I phrase it is decide to live forever changed and forever free. But you could just write, make a decision to not buy stuff anymore, to not overconsume. I'm going to change the way I live.
Okay, I've got Christina here for you. Try and put her on. Christina, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
I can. How are you?
I'm great. I wanted to first tell you that I am so glad that I signed up for this course. I thought about it for several years and I just finally bit the bullet and spent the money to do it. And it's been very helpful to me. As a matter
Thank
of
you.
fact, it's been so helpful that today I was out and about and had extra time and I almost went to a thrift store and I said, no, I don't need something else in my house right now. So
Great. Well, I'm glad you're here, and
yeah.
I'm glad you didn't
My-
buy anything, or this would have been a really awkward conversation for you to sit.
no, my question actually has to do with some of the tougher stuff. You've talked a lot about it, the sentimental things or whatever, but like I have a ton of physical pictures and digital pictures of things that happened in our life and our kids and my growing up and pictures from my mom and my dad. And I just don't want to tackle them. I would rather go back and take something else out of my kitchen or something else out of my bedroom than to hit those pictures. So how do I get motivated for that?
How do we got them? Boxes, shoe boxes, photo albums?
I would say 8 shoe boxes easily, maybe more.
Okay.
That's just the physical
Yeah.
ones.
Mhm.
When digital became easier, I probably have at least that many in digital also.
You have family who likes going through photos?
I have a daughter that will scrapbook, and she has and she's an unemotional, she's unattached. So she would
Mhm.
be a good one to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so my thoughts are, I don't know if I'll offer anything incredibly groundbreaking here, but maybe I'll just reiterate what you've been thinking. Number one, photos take a lot of time and
Mhm.
they take a lot of effort. So sounds like you're bracing yourself for that and you've been avoiding it over and over again. So glad I could
Mm.
reinforce that. I don't think you should think bad at all about I'm going to keep decluttering my kitchen because I want to avoid the photos. I think if you're making, actually, I think you finish the whole kitchen before you go on to the photos or go to the
Yeah.
laundry room or the home office, whatever it might be. When you get to the photos, I think you will be more successful if you know what your plan is going into it. So, and the goal is always something presentable, like a photo album
Mhm.
or something like that. This is when we enjoy photos, not when they're in shoe boxes, but when someone has gone through and has put them in a photo album that we can flip. Anytime you've ever enjoyed photos, they were in a photo album of some sort.
Mhm.
But I think you just want to decide what's it going to be. Am I going to have one of my father and one of my mother and one of when I was a kid? Is it going to be a certain trip that we took or of their marriage? Am I going to be putting one together for myself and putting one together for my daughter? My grandpa, before he died, he took a ton of photos, and his project was that he put together a photo album for each of his 4 kids, starting with both him and his wife when they were younger, and then they were married, and then like photos of the child growing up, and then gave one to each of them on a Christmas. And I think that plan, I think that strategy helps you kind of as you're going through that, try and decide what to keep and what to get rid of.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, unless someone was really good at photography or you're a family of professional photographers, I think, I don't know, 1 out of every 4 or 1 out of every 5 is worth keeping. Like, you're almost better off, I think, looking for the ones that you're going to keep rather than deciding which ones to get rid of, because you'll probably end up with more that you're getting rid of than you need to keep. And I was going to say, I asked about if you have any family members. Yeah, if you get together and do it for I don't know, over the holidays or some weekend, you decide to do it. I'm trying to picture the times that we go through photos. It's a high school graduation, we're going through photos. A marriage, we're going through photos. When someone passes away, we're going through photos. And it's always like there's a project that we have at the end. There's a set time when we have to go through it and make the decisions. And I think maybe embracing some of those ideas will help you put it together.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
And even if there's a intermediate step of, hey, I'm going to put together these photo albums based on these themes. And so you put the photo albums together, and all the other photos can just go back in the basement, assuming they're out of the way. Like, I got the albums, I'm not quite ready to throw out all the photos, but I've sorted all of these. These have all been sorted. All the good ones have been pulled out. I'm just not ready to get rid of them. So here's the way I present them. Here's the way people enjoy them. And then here's all the extras. And at some point I'll get rid of them.
Yeah, I started that process about 20 years ago. My dining room table was covered with stacks of all these photos. And then it was Thanksgiving. And so I had to clean the table off, and it ended up back into a mess, unfortunately.
Yeah, they're not sorted at all.
You know, when I put them in the containers they're in now, I kind of sorted them. You know, these are our military photos. These all have our daughter in it. These all have our other daughter in it. These are from trips, you know, so it's kind of sorted.
Yeah, I think I don't take it for what it's worth, but I think that's how I would attack it. I want to put together the photo album of this. I want to put together the photo album of that.
Yeah.
To help you pick them out and fill it up. Nice meeting you, Christina.
Nice
I'm glad
meeting
you
you.
joined, by the way.
Thank you.
Salem, we are at an hour and a half. So that was a good ending. Do we have some questions that I did not answer?
Yeah, I've got them for you.
Okay, so if you asked a question and I did not answer it, I will make, how many we got, Salem? I can get through all of them tomorrow?
Sure. I got a good amount, but yeah, you can.
Okay. I will make a long video tomorrow, and we'll post it on the course resources page. And I'll just work through all the questions that got asked. We are in week 7, so still plenty of time, but at some point I need to make sure everything gets answered. So thanks for copying those for me. Salem, I will get that done within 24 hours. So at some point by this time tomorrow, that video should be up there, and I'll list them out in order. I don't have a good way to like timestamp, or you can skip to yours, but I'll list them out in order. And so if you don't want to listen to all the video, you can skip ahead to try to find yours. Okay, everybody, thanks for joining us. We are changing modules to clutter-free habits on Monday. So look forward to that. Finish up the decluttering work in your room. Keep pushing forward. One big push this weekend, and then we'll switch gears on Monday. Talk to you all later. Bye.